Hi guys, welcome back to the 401 Files. My name is Ben and I create content here on the 401 Files with everything that you could possibly consider to be thought-provoking. Now, in this video, I want to talk about something that was kind of triggered by a previous video that I recently did. Now, I was talking to you guys and I was showing you the footage of the San Diego UFO that submerged below the ocean surface. And it occurred to me while making that video that there are a lot of coincidences with UFO sightings and large bodies of water. We have the Allagash incident, which was on a lake. We have all these Navy pilots now coming out and reporting these UFOs out at sea, and so on and so on and so on, and even reports of extraterrestrials floating around underneath the ocean wearing some kind of breathing apparatus. So we're going to talk about that right now. We're going to try and connect the dots the best we can, and hopefully you guys will find this interesting and enjoy this as well. So yeah, sit back, grab yourself a coffee guys, relax, enjoy. I'll see you at the end. So for many years, guys, me along with many other hundreds of people have speculated that there is some significance behind UFO sightings and large bodies of water. We just have to look at a few of the most famous cases that we have today. The famous Allagash UFO abduction case, where the 4 guys were abducted off Eagle Lake. Or what about that other famous UFO footage? The one that was filmed just off the coast of Istanbul in Turkey and was hovering over the Black Sea. Now this thing made an appearance 3 consecutive years in a row. And of course, we all remember Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker, who were abducted off Pascagoula River back in 1973. Now of course, there are some other reoccurring land masses that seem to have a reoccurring connection with UFO sightings. Mainly deserted areas, nuclear power stations and lonely country roads. These all seem to be very big hotspots for a chance encounter with a UFO. But one of the more compelling UFO stories, and definitely one of the most creepy that I've ever heard regarding UFOs, extraterrestrials and large bodies of water, came from a top secret file that was released by the Russians in 2009. It was during a routine exercise when the Russian sub that was really deep down in the world's largest freshwater lake noticed something strange on their radar. The Russian sub was in Lake Baikal, which I've already mentioned is the world's largest freshwater lake, when it noticed 6 disc-shaped unidentified craft flying through the water. What the Russian crew then realised on this sub was that these 6 unidentified craft flying through the water were in some kind of a formation at a depth of 260 meters, but that isn't what startled them the most. After a short period of observing these 6 unidentified craft on the radar, the Russian submarine crew then realised that these craft were heading directly towards them at a speed of 260 miles an hour. I can only imagine how terrifying this must have been and how confusing for the Russian submarine crew at that time, because this was 2009 and back then they were on state-of-the-art submarines, and yet they're seeing things that can't logically be explained heading directly towards them. 260 miles an hour is a hell of a speed for anything to be moving through the water. Even a bullet doesn't move through the water for very long at 260 miles an hour. But this story gradually becomes more and more unnerving as it goes on, because as the submarine became alarmed at these objects approaching at that speed, they started to basically slam on at speed. And what was really funny at this point was that these craft did exactly the same, almost as if they were mirroring what the submarine was doing. At this point inside the submarine, all hell breaks loose. People are in a state of panic because the captain is preempting some kind of deep underwater collision. Everybody's moving around very quickly, there's panic in the air, anxiety, and so the captain basically orders everybody to their battle stations and radios ahead for an emergency resurface. What's even more disturbing to the captain of this Russian submarine is that when he breaches the surface of the water and they're there just floating in this huge lake, they see through the periscope these 6 objects breach the water, shoot up into the sky and fly off at speed. Now can you imagine being somebody who's highly trained and qualified as this Russian submarine captain was, and seeing something like that you can't turn to the guy next to you and explain? That must have been absolutely terrifying, and they must have been left in complete bewilderment at this point. I guess we can only speculate as to what these mysterious unidentified craft were doing. Like, was this some kind of a preempted strike, a warning of some kind, a threat, or was they simply trying to avoid detection? The sad thing here is that I guess we'll never really know. But however creepy that story was, that still isn't the most chilling story revealed in Russia's declassified reports. In my opinion, the most terrifying report to come out of these classified top secret documents is nothing to do with unidentified submergible objects. It's to do with the actual creatures themselves. This report really did creep me out. So we're back in Russia again. It's 1982, and this case tells a story of some Russian divers in Lake Baikal, which is the lake I've just mentioned. It is the largest freshwater lake in the world with a depth of about 1,642 meters. So it's very, very deep. And these Russian divers are diving to do a research mission, basically because of the depth of this lake and its frigid temperatures. Very, very little is known about what's under the surface. So these 7 Russian divers, also known as frogmen, are down in Lake Baikal, and they're down at a depth of about 50 meters when all of a sudden they realize that they're being watched. They're being watched by what they reported to be some kind of a humanoid wearing a helmet. Now they're much taller than humans, they're about 9 feet tall. What is going on here? Like, really, what is going on? Because it's one thing to talk about USOs, unidentified submergible objects within the lake, but to talk about humanoids lurking deep with under the lake's surface? This is terrifying. What is going on here? These 7 divers did actually report as well that these humanoid beings were wearing some kind of tight-fitted garments. So here we have these humanoids, these weird-looking underwater creatures wearing helmets, just floating there, suspended in the depth of this freshwater lake, watching your every movement. This is absolutely terrifying. I can't even imagine the conversation that was going on at the time between these divers, because can you imagine not knowing what to do next? Whether you should get the hell out of there really quickly or stay still? Because you don't know anything about these creatures, and yet you know there's some intelligence there because they're wearing helmets. They're wearing garments that look like they belong to some kind of a human intelligent race. This is crazy. And yet here you are, deep below a freshwater lake in Russia. This doesn't make sense. This shouldn't be happening. This isn't make-believe. This is not some kind of kids just off on a summer trip jumping in the lake and making up stories. This is intelligent, well-trained, well-educated, experienced divers for the Russian military out there doing a research dive when they come across these beings that look like humans in shape. They're about 9 feet tall, wearing silver, tight-fitting uniforms and helmets of some kind that we have no description for. We don't know what they were. They didn't have oxygen tanks like the typical diver, and they were just hovering there, suspended in the water deep in Lake Baikal, watching these divers' every move. Now these divers decided after a period of time to try and capture one of these beings, and what happened next was these beings retaliated. They don't know what happened. They can't explain it in detail because they don't have the words to describe what they saw, but there was some kind of a reaction, a response from these beings, and all of a sudden, all 7 divers were forced by an invisible force to the surface of the water very, very fast. Now what happens when you emerge out of water very quickly from some kind of considerable depth is that you get the bends, and unfortunately 3 of the 7 divers did in fact die, and the other 4 were very severely injured as a result of this. Now we have to believe that whatever force these beings used on these 7 divers was done in self-defense, because I hear a lot of people always saying that these UFOs, these extraterrestrials, are peaceful, calm, loving beings that would never hurt humans. I disagree to some degree, because if we look at the Travis Walton case, Travis was never going to be hurt by that UFO from what we know. It was only once he walked upon it and got really, really close that this thing fired out the energy beam and wiped Travis out. But it did bring him back, fully healed and intact. So I do think that these beings, these intelligent creatures that are visiting Earth, will respond with self-defense if they are pressured, because like I said, these divers were never in any danger as far as we're aware. They were just being observed from a distance. It was only until they tried to throw a net around one of these creatures and capture it that force was used in self-defense. As with all very interesting UFO and extraterrestrial stories, the Lake Baikal diver story was quickly put to bed, and it almost vanished completely out of the public eye. Some claim that the divers were just simply too shook up to talk about it anymore, and others claimed that they were silenced by the Russian military. I find this story completely credible, completely terrifying, and it's one of those stories until you put yourself in their perspective, in their shoes, and try to imagine it in your mind's eye, what it must have been like being down there experiencing this with your colleagues. How terrifying that actually is. I've got a question for you guys before I head out of here. I want to know what you guys think of this story and why there is a connection with UFOs, extraterrestrials and water. Also as well, a little second question to add to that is, do you believe that these divers could have been abducted underwater? Like, is that a thing? Do people still experience missing time? Do people still experience abductions while underwater? Because these are cases that we don't normally hear a lot about, and I'd be interested to know what you guys think. Until then guys, take it easy, look after yourselves. Thank you for joining me here on the 401 Files. I will see you on the next one.